Welcome to enNovo Radio, your place to gather insight and wisdom for creating healthy organizations. Discover how to uncover defects in your organization and find ways to be a powerful force of change for your organization. Here's your host, David Phillips.
Welcome back to enNovo Radio. This is the third post, the third article, the third podcast, where we're looking at Leadership 4.0, and today I want to look at the leadership profile. So, as I said in a previous post, Leadership 4.0 is about agility, and Leadership 4.0 will require that same mindset. And so, on this podcast, I want to look at the Leadership 4.0 profile from both an organizational and an individual framework. So that's the plan and the goal here. So let's look at it first from an organizational framework. So workforces, especially the technical, digital, and engineering teams, have to be able to analyze data, present good information that results from that data, and respond fast with their predictions and decisions across business. Now, there's a difference between data and information. Data is our sales were down 30% last year. Information is our sales were down 30%, or our revenue was down 30%. Last year because we had a lot of returns that resulted from the arms of the teddy bear falling off. So it's one thing to have data, it's another thing to have information. So you can have, our revenue was down 30% last year. Why is that revenue down 30%? Why was it down 30% last year? So the revenue down 30% last year is the data point. The why is the information. And so these teams, finance, all the teams have to be able to analyze the data, present good information, and then respond with predictions and decisions across the business and changes across the business. So yes, the second aspect of the organizational framework, the profile, teams won't be fixed, but they'll be fluid. They're formed from the skills that are required for cross-functional projects. So you're not going to have a team that only does X, Y, and Z. You're going to have a cross-functional team that is brought together based on the need to solve A, B, and C. And so that's going to require exceptional organizational and delegation skills from leaders who understand where the talents are and how to bring those together to distribute those tasks among those cross-functional teams. So they have to know who has the skill set that can be brought together to solve the problem. And so those teams will form, in some cases, they'll do self-organization. But in other cases, you're going to need a leader who knows the skill set and the talents and the competence of people within that organization and be able to bring those people together in a cross-functional way to solve the problem. Here's the third aspect of that profile. Leadership 4.0 will require the digital leaders who can take responsibility of the people side of this massive and ongoing change, that have a clear direction and are able to manage people in an open, employee-centric environment. This is the big thing about Leadership 4.0 is it's employee-centric. So you've got to have your leadership has to, one of the aspects of that leadership is someone who can take responsibility of the people side of this, of all of this, that can bring clarity, offer clear direction, and be able to manage the people. It's not manage the projects, it's manage the people. People skills, people management, relational intelligence are going to be huge in Industry 4.0 and Leadership 4.0. The fourth thing, employees have to be primary within the organization. If your employees are not well cared for, then the organization's abilities to take care of its other stakeholders will be limited. Let me say that again. If your employees are not well cared for, then the organization's ability to take care of its other stakeholders will be limited. This is very real. The organization, another aspect of that profile is going to be employee driven. The solutions to issues will come from the employees, not the leaders. That's going to be a major difference. It's a bottom-up leadership. If the information is shared fully within the organization, the power of ideas and the creativity within the organization come together to form the solutions. The problem too often is that leaders don't provide all the necessary data and information to their employees, and it limits the power of the talents and skills within the organization to come up with solutions. This is simply an attempt to control. This is the leader trying to be the hero. If you don't share all the information, if you're not transparent in what you know, then the talents and skills of the people within that organization can't come up with the effective solution. And so the solutions will be employee-driven primarily. And the sixth aspect of this organizational framework in a 4.0 leadership model is that organizations will need to be focused on creating an infinite mindset. And I hope to cover some of that in a future podcast, but this idea flows from Simon Sinek. And so you have an infinite mindset playing an infinite game where you're in it for the long haul. You're not in it. This is not about this is not about building a business for the shareholders. This is about building a business for all stakeholders, primarily the employees, because when the employees are doing a great job and are cared for and are appreciated, then the employees will create and develop. And you're going to get extraordinary things out of that organization. And I hope to touch on that in another podcast. Now let's look at some of the skill set of 4.0 leaders from an individual framework. 4.0 leaders have to foster a transparent, creative culture that can bend and move as change and situations dictate. This new work environment will be a big and possibly uncomfortable move for many who are used to closed and rigid project management within the traditional manufacturing framework. They will need to be a new breed, leading in a way that organizations haven't seen before, prepared to embrace a very different way of working, just as their employees will be encouraged to develop their skills to become cross-functional in the way they work for their own personal needs and the common goal of the organization. Leadership has to mirror the technology of Industry 4.0 and the Internet of Things, in that connectivity is at its core. Some actually call this connected leadership for that very reason. So here are some of the qualities, and there's 5 of them. They have to be highly relational. The leader needs to know those whom they lead, their motivations, their desires, and the skill sets they hold. This allows them to fashion highly effective teams with varying skill sets. It allows them to bring together cross-functional teams to solve problems and create solutions. Here's the second quality. They are highly adaptable. Processes cannot be set in stone. Some processes got to be tossed and others have to be maintained, but rigidity in practice and process must be eliminated. The landscape of work and function is changing rapidly, and the leader has to be able to adapt his or her thinking and processes, even if it's just to tweak them. And the leader needs to be transparent about the strategies and processes they adopt, why they adopt it, so that all members of the team can be on the same page. Number 3. 4.0 leaders have to trust the people they lead. You can't allow for the self-organization of teams, allowing all those teams to create and drive solutions for the organization without a high degree of trust. And the teams you lead must know that you trust them. That's huge. Number 4. There has to be limited control, and it has to be employee-driven. High levels of trust mean limited control. Most of the solutions that are developed are not going to be leader-led, but employee-driven. And so controlling the outcomes will be limited. One of the reasons leaders are not fully transparent about their strategy is they just trust how people will use that information, so they hold it close to the vest. But this results in people making suboptimal decisions because they don't know all that's happening within the organization. And until they can know strategies and ideas and all that's going on, they can't create an optimal solution, and they can't make optimal decisions. You got to have limited control. It's got to be much more transparency. And the fifth and final thing that is fifth final quality of a 4.0 leader on the individual side is learning. The culture of the organization must be a learning organization, both inside and outside the domain of the organization. Leaders, as a result, have to learn from those outside their industry. Generalists, not specialists, have greater creativity. They're more agile, and they're able to make connections and are able to make connections with their more specialized peers. And they're able to make more connections than what their specialized peers can see. There's a really good book on this by David Epstein. It's called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. And I'd encourage you to pick that book up and read it. It's 2019 copyright, and it's really good. So there you go. That's the profile of a 4.0 leader. And I hope that you can take that, Use it in your organization. Transform yourself as a leader. Be more trusting. Be more employee-driven. Be more agile. And move your organization forward in a world that's transitioning from Industry 3.0 to Industry 4.0. You think about that. Great day.
Thanks for listening in today, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode of Powerful Insight. For more up-to-date information and tips to help you on your quest for change, head over to the website at www.wdavidphillips.com and sign up for our newsletter.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of enNovo Radio. I really do appreciate it. If you want to take some time, I'd really appreciate it if you could go over to iTunes and maybe give a review if you like it. If you don't do that. Also, you can sign up for our newsletter at wdavidphillips.com, and you can find me on Facebook as well. Look forward to interacting with you. Have a great day.